finish what you started all those years ago. Witch.
Nick goes after Zelena, and Facilier continues his evil quest. Let's break down Season 7, Episode 17 of Once Upon a Time right here on What Happened. How's it going, Onceers? Lisa here, and welcome back to this week's recap. So this episode is titled Chosen, and all I have to say is that Rebecca Mader crushed it in this episode, as did Lana, who did a hell of a job directing the episode. Now, the relationship between Zelena and Regina is once again at the forefront here, and it's one of my favorites, and I won't lie, I kind of teared up a tiny bit by the end when they were saying their goodbyes to each other. I vote for a spin-off of just these two characters, or a movie, because I don't want their story to end. As far as the episode goes, we get our backstory as to how Zelena fits into the Hansel and Gretel story, and we find out what Dr. Facilier was using Drew for, so let's just get this recap started. We'll start off with our fairy tale storyline. Our Hansel and Gretel witch has the two kids locked up in licorice cages and is trying to fatten them up. We get a shout out to Frozen here when Gretel doesn't want to keep eating, and the witch says there are starving children in Arendelle. The witch's plan is interrupted though when Zelena shows up, because Zelena wants to banish this witch. Zelena knocks out our gingerbread witch, and Gretel tries asking for help, but you can already sense that Hansel has a deep hatred for witches when he sees Zelena, and Zelena's really not gonna help them. Just then, the gingerbread witch gets up, drops a chandelier on Zelena, and blasts her out of the house. Zelena ends up knocked out, kinda walking around like she's drunk, and ends up passing out in the forest. When she awakens, she's in a cabin and can't find her necklace. The owner of the cabin appears and tells her that he fixed her necklace. It turns out that this blind carpenter is none other than Hansel and Gretel's father, who spends his nights searching for his lost children. When Zelena learns who he is, yeah, you can bet she's like, oh shiz. Now, Zelena's still pretty weak from her showdown with the gingerbread witch, and she can't get her magic to work, so she and the father end up spending a lot of time together, and it seems like the father, Ivo, sees the real beauty in Zelena, something no one really has before. When Ivo says he wishes he could hear his kids' voices just one last time, Zelena knows what she must do. Zelena ends up leaving him and goes back to the witch's gingerbread house, where they once again go head to head. Zelena ends up taking the witch's sight, and when she goes inside to try to rescue Hansel and Gretel, she sees that the cages are empty and Hansel's hat is on the ground, so she assumes the witch has already baked them and killed them. Zelena returns to Ivo's house to tell him the truth, but unfortunately for her, he already knows everything because Hansel and Gretel escaped the gingerbread witch and returned home and told him everything about what happened and Zelena. Zelena says she's trying to be good, but it's too late because Ivo wants nothing to do with her and Hansel wants to kill her. When she offers Ivo the witch's sight, he doesn't want that either, which pisses Zelena off and brings back out the bad witch side of her, so she destroys the vial with the witch's sight in it. Hansel then threatens her with a knife, and that's when mad Zelena causes the fire from the fireplace to engulf Hansel's arms, and then she disappears. So yeah, that's one of the mistakes in Henry's version of Hansel and Gretel, what they got wrong. Hansel didn't get his burns from the gingerbread witch trying to cook him, but because of Zelena, which is why little Nicky in Hyperion Heights is super pissed and wants vengeance against Zelena. So yeah, let's just head over to Hyperion Heights. Nick still has Henry tied up, and he pretends to be Henry by sending a text to Jacinda saying that the interview went well and stuff to keep the charade that Henry's out of town. Henry then resorts to talking a lot to try to keep himself alive and to keep Nick from doing anything bad. So you know what? Henry tells Nick he can rewrite the story and all this stuff, but Nick isn't falling for any of the crap that Henry's saying. Nick has his sights set on Zelena, and nothing seems to be budging that. Nick then starts telling Henry a bunch of things that only awake Henry would remember, probably in an effort to maybe wake up Henry, but Nick basically says he was happy in his new life as Jack and tells Zelena and Regina showed up to help Henry, and seeing the witches, especially Zelena, triggered him. He believes all witches are bad and that Zelena is responsible for not only his burns, but Gretel being determined to become a powerful witch that ended up getting her killed by Mother Gothel. Nick also shows Henry that Henry is Lucy's father and tries to tell Henry that Zelena is Kelly and all this stuff, but Henry isn't believing any of it. So Nick ends up knocking Henry out in order to go on his quest to kill Zelena. Meanwhile, Zelena is over at Ronnie's, still missing her life as Kelly, and Regina ends up returning, having found the ingredient she needs to finish the potion to cure Henry. Zelena informs Regina that Henry is in New York and that she is in fact the Candy Killer's next target. We also learn in this episode that Zelena really has changed, but her evil past keeps coming back to haunt her. Rogers is informed that Henry's car was found with a flat tire on the side of the road, so he's about to go check it out when Zelena and Margot walk into the station and he sees her carrying a box of chocolates. Rogers wants to question the two, so he takes Margot with him while Zelena manages to make up an excuse to get away and go talk to Rumple, and I just love Zelena and Rumple's banter back and forth. It's like that love-hate relationship that reminds me of like the older brother and the younger nagging sister that are always at each other's throats, but deep down, they really look out for each other. Zelena asks Rumple for help, but he doesn't seem like he really wants to help her, so she says he can't let her die if he ever wants to be reunited with Belle, and you know that's like the golden ticket for Rumple if you want him to do anything. So Rumple takes Zelena to the evidence room and gives her back her magical necklace, even though it doesn't really have any magic in it in this realm. And he gives her a good piece of advice because she's again down on herself about not being able to escape her past no matter how much you can change.
Nasty little piece of us. Just can't get rid of.
And we shouldn't. Because it's that piece that shows us how far we've come. And how much we have to lose.
Zelena then returns to the bar and puts on the necklace, and Regina returns with weapons for both of them. Zelena answers a call that ends up being from Chad, her fiance. But surprise, it turns out Nick is also on the line because Nick has captured Chad. He made up an excuse to get Chad to come to town, saying Kelly was hurt. Zelena then makes up a lie about Chad being at the airport and Regina needs to pick him up to get rid of Regina so she can take on the situation by herself. Zelena then hears a noise coming from the cellar and goes down to find Chad tied up down there. Of course, Nick pops out too. They share some choice words with each other. Nick tries to take Zelena down, but Zelena ends up kicking his ass because, yeah, you don't mess with Zelena, magic or no magic. Nick tells Zelena to finish what she started, but you can see that Zelena truly has changed because she doesn't kill him even though she has the chance. She says no and that she isn't that person anymore, so instead she just knocks him out. She then frees Chad and the two have a heart-to-heart where Zelena informs him that she has a shady past, of course leaving out the fact that she's a fairy tale character and a witch. Thankfully, Chad is actually a really good, compassionate guy and really loves Kelly, and he accepts her for who she is now and loves her no matter what, and he still wants to marry her. Zelena then catches Regina up on everything, and Zelena still hasn't told Chad that she plans to stay in town and can't go back to San Francisco with him. Regina then tells Zelena that Kelly and Zelena both deserve happiness and that she should go and that Regina can hold the fort down in Hyperion Heights. It's a great sister moment. Zelena also ends up telling Margot she has a past, which Margot's kind of already figured out by now and has accepted that Zelena can't really tell her about it yet. Zelena tells Margot she should come back to San Francisco with them, but Margot actually says she likes Hyperion Heights now thanks to a particular quirky blonde, so she wants to stick around for a while. They'll see each other in a few months though at the wedding, in which Zelena asks Margot to be her maid of honor and gives her her necklace. So can the series finale just be everyone happy at Zelena's wedding, like one big happy family with everybody awake but now living their happy lives? Meanwhile, Rogers went out to check on Henry's car and called the airline and found out that Henry never checked in for his flight. He then finds Jacinda to see if she's heard from Henry, and she's like, oh yeah, he's fine, and shows him the text. Rogers notices it's a gingerbread house kit in Jacinda's car, which she says is from Nick, and he kind of starts to get suspicious and has a hunch that maybe Nick is up to no good. But to confirm this, he asks Jacinda if there's anything in the text that doesn't sound like Henry. She says he's never called her Jay before, only Sabine does that. Rogers then remembers that the other night at the barcade, Nick called Jacinda Jay, so he knows just where Henry has to be, and he jets over to Nick's place and frees Henry. Henry then heads over to Jacinda's, where he's greeted with hugs from her and Lucy, and he says that he's staying and that job wasn't for him. Now I'm just wondering if maybe Henry's awake now and just isn't saying anything because he didn't want to blow his cover with Nick. I don't know, but you know what? If I was in Henry's shoes and I just saw my life flash before my eyes and I was really into someone that I hadn't told them how I felt yet, and if I was reunited with them after that stressful of a situation, I would have planted a smooch on that person instead of just hugging them. But Henry ends up sticking to the hugs, which ends up being good because he hasn't been cured yet, and obviously bad things would happen if they kissed, but still. This man has no game. As far as Drew, he's still working with Sabine, and there's obviously some flirting going on between them, so it's like, do you ship Drew and Sabine, or do you ship Rogers and Sabine? But that's not the point of this part of the story. Of course, Dr. Facilier isn't far away from Drew, and he keeps checking in on Drew, who he of course woke up for a reason in order to earn Sabine's trust. But why exactly? We see that Facilier needed Drew to learn the recipe to make Sabine's famous beignets, because for some reason, they hold the power Facilier needs to activate his little voodoo doll. Now, what's this special ingredient? We're not sure, but there is one because Sabine leaves Drew on the truck to go get some more of it. So what does Facilier do with his new magical voodoo doll? He shows up to the room where Nick is being held at the police station for questioning. It turns out Facilier woke up Nick because he thought that Nick's witch hunt agenda would benefit him and help him get rid of Mother Gothel, who was in competition with Facilier for the Dark One's power. Well, Nick messed up his chances by getting caught, and Facilier deems Nick a wild card. So Facilier takes out a pin, stabs the heart of the doll, which in turn kills Nick. And well, that wraps up the main events of this week's episode. So Facilier is trying to get to the Dark One's power, but obviously so is Mother Gothel, so it's kind of a race between these two, and they're not afraid to use whoever they need to in order to get there. I'm pretty sure Regina won't be too happy to find out that Facilier is still a dirty, sneaky liar, although we shouldn't really be surprised by that. Nick now is, I'm assuming, dead, which will of course confuse the heck out of whoever walks into that interrogation room, but at least the candy killer is off the scene. And from what it seems like, Zelena's gonna go off and get her happy ending, and she's proof that people truly can change. You just kind of have to give them a chance. Now, let's look at the promo for the next episode.
Walk down the building.
I'm here about the dagger. It's missing, and I need to know if you took it.
Samdi's powerful in ways you can't even possibly imagine.
Why are you bloody here?
I came to test Alice. I believe she's destined to become a great hero.
Dark One, sending little girls to do your dirty work now. You'll pay for this.
Alright, Rumpel versus Facilier. Now that is a match that I would probably pay for pay-per-view to see. I like that these two are going to go head-to-head. I've been missing Rumpel. I feel like they haven't done enough with him this season, so hopefully now with this last handful of episodes, he's going to get his time to shine this season. And this promo also kind of confirms what I think we all already knew since the beginning of this season, that Alice, aka Tilly, is the other candidate to be the Guardian since Anastasia left. Now, like I said, we only have like a handful of episodes left in the series, so I'm just wondering how much longer until Tilly and Rogers wake up. Will Regina's cure end up working for Henry? And who will ultimately end up with the Dark One's powers? I think that these last episodes are actually starting to get more exciting, so I'm getting excited to see the series come to an end. Well, not see it come to the end, but I think that the end will be exciting. Now it is your time to hit the comments and let me know what you thought of this episode and who delivered your favorite performance. Are you glad that Zelena has really turned her life around? And what do you think will happen with Gothel and Facilier? Leave all your theories in the comments down below, then you can click right over here to check out my game of Never Have I Ever with Lucy Hale and Tyler Posey for their new movie, Truth or Dare. Subscribe and hit that thumbs up if you like what you see. My name's Lisa, and I'll see you again next time.